Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're obviously gonna be talking about lights. So maybe you're like me, you have the 90s front end on your Volvo 740. Now I don't really fancy this front end. I don't think it looks very good. I would much rather have the 80s front end because that looks a lot more boxy. It looks more 80s, which is what I'm looking for. Maybe you like the American front end. That's also pretty boxy, looks pretty good. Or maybe you're a bit of a more of a modern type and you like the 940 front end or even the S90 front end. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the different headlights and what you kind of can do there. We're also going to be taking a look at the taillights and your different choices around that. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to show you guys an example of how I want my 740 project to look like. Alright, so let's start off with the 1990s Volvo 740 front end, or lights if you will. This one is absolutely the messiest of the whole bunch here because there's a lot going on in 1990. Alright, so the 1990 model had a unique trim around the light here. It also had a unique grille and a unique hood just for the model year 1990. The 1991 to 1992 looks very, very similar to the 1990, but there are subtle differences, like the hood is wider because it uses the 940 hood. Another thing to keep track of, just to make things even worse, is that the 1990 740 Turbo model had the 940 front end, which we're going to get into later. That is also why the 940 front end will fit very, very easily onto a 1990 to 1992 Volvo 740 without any major modifications at all. However, if you want it to look good, you got to take the hood from a 940 if you want to put it on a 1990. You don't need to do that if you put it onto a 1991 or 92 because they already had the 940 hood. And you might also want to consider changing out the bumper in the front because the 940 bumper is a bit more pointy than the original 740 bumper. According to Volvo, the 1990 Volvo 740 is the last true Volvo 740. The later models, the 91 to 92, was more or less a Volvo 940 with a 740 back end welded onto it. And it kind of makes sense because the Volvo 940 model did start in 1991, so I guess they were on the same assembly line or something, I don't really know. And of course, this model was a little bit different in the United States. It had a different style of headlight. It looked about the same. I think the dimensions are the same, but the insert and the glass is a bit different on the American model. Also, the blinkers is not the same. And since the 1990s Volvo 740 headlights are so closely related to the Volvo 940 headlight, let's jump over there and talk a little bit about that one. All right, so this is the Volvo 940 front end or front headlight, whatever you want to call it, front headlight assembly. This can be found on a 1990 Volvo 740 Turbo, or it can be found on any 940 from 1991 to 1998. Now, the looks of this light started in 1988 on the Volvo 760. At least they look the same, but I'm not really sure if the mounting points and the holes and setup, all of that is the same. So I'm gonna let that be untold. I'm not gonna be talking about those, but I am aware that this style of light started in 1988. And also worth mentioning is that the 940 headlight is a bit different on the American models. On the American models, they are split in half, and one's a fog light, I think, and then the rest is headlight, and it has a different blinkers. Now, what we should actually do is remove this, and we should put those two together. All right, so the point I want to be making is that the 1990 to 1992 headlight assembly of the Volvo 740 and the 1991 to 1998 Volvo 940 headlight assembly are interchangeable. You can bolt this headlight assembly onto a 940, you can bolt this headlight assembly onto a 740 if you want to. Okay, so that covers a little bit about these new style of headlights. So now let's move on to the old style of headlights. Getting one of these lights. Sorry, my light's overheated. All right, so let's move on to the boxy 80s style headlights. Now, these ran from 1982 till 1989. They started off on the Volvo 760 model in 1982 and ran on the 760 model all the way until 1987. But as we all know, in 1984, Volvo started the production of the Volvo 740, and they would take these headlights all the way until 1989. Now, worth mentioning about these headlights is that these will not fit a 1990 or 1991 or 1992 Volvo 740 because the mounting bracket on the car that is welded to the car is different in the back end. You see, these headlights are screwed in 4 places right onto the car like so, while the 90s model are screwed in over here at the blinkers and on the side right here. So in order to get these headlights onto a 1990s Volvo 740, you will have to change the fenders, the hood, the cowl, the bumpers, the grille, basically everything from the firewall forward to get these on. But don't you worry, because we're gonna be covering this. We're gonna be doing this conversion. We're gonna convert my 90s Volvo 740 into an 80s Volvo 740 because I wanna get the American headlights on there. All right, so this is the 1982 to 1989 America spec headlights for the 80s style of Volvos. This is basically the American version of the European style square headlight. But it does feature this nice chrome trim, the quad setup of sealed beam headlights, these nice blinkers or positioning. I don't really know if this is the blinkers or the positioning light, or this is the blinkers and positioning light. I'm not really sure. But I think it looks a lot better than the European spec. And you know, me growing up in Europe, this is very, very common. This one, not so common, even though they're very, very popular. But I think they just give the 740 the ultimate 80s look. So this is what we're gonna be running with on the project car. Now, the original plan for the 740 project was to run with the 940 headlights because that was much more in my budget. A good set of these American spec headlights will run you about $800 here in Sweden. And I just thought it was way too much at the time. But then I came over these pretty cheap. So I decided to buy them and restore them. I've already gone halfway on restoring the other headlight. If you guys want to see a restoration video of this headlight, drop a comment and maybe I'll make one of those. But anyway, this is what we're going to be running on the 740 project. All right, that's a little bit about my recommended headlight choices for your 740. I'm just going to briefly mention the Volvo S90 conversion as well. All right, so this is what's called the S90 front end or front headlight in this case. This ran from 1995 till 1998, I believe, either on the 960 or the S90 as it later became. Now, these will not fit in any way, shape or form on your 740, but you can make them fit if you use the S90 hardware, the plate behind the light that holds the light. You gotta use the fenders from the S90. You gotta use the grille, the bumper, and a whole lot of other small bits and pieces to get these on there. But I just wanted to mention that it is an option if a very modern style is what you're looking for. I'm not 100% sure of how to do this, but I just wanted to quickly mention that this is an option. All right, so let's move on to the rear of the 740. So from 1982 until 1989, Volvo 760 and Volvo 740 had the square taillights with 6 squares in the back. That was available with either black or chrome trim in between the lights, and maybe with a few other twists depending on what kind of model it was, if it was a GLE or GLT or whatever it could be. I'm not really 100% sure. And they were available with the square European headlights or the square American front headlights. In 1990, they decided to change the taillights on both the 740 and the 760 at the same time. So a lot of stuff happened in 1990. So this light was released for the Volvo 740 in 1990. They ran with these all the way until they stopped production in 1992. Now, I really like these headlights over the 80s style square headlights, which is weird because I generally like the square stuff. I don't really know. I think it's because it reminds me of old American cars. They make the car look a little bit wider as well. So this is definitely a favorite. But it gets even better because in 1990, they decided to change the taillight of the Volvo 760 and made it 3.5 inches longer than the model they made for the 740. This makes it even better. It makes it even wider. It makes the car look wider. Definitely a favorite. I've always wanted a set of these, but they have been just so crazy expensive. But I got a couple for a really good price. So this is what we're gonna be running with on the 740 project car. Now, worth mentioning that neither this or the 760 taillight will fit the 80s body style. but it can be easily fixed with just a few cuts to make it fit. And then you will have to sort out the electrical bit as well, since this one has a different connector than the old Square 6. All right, so that's a little bit about headlights and taillights and kind of what you can do there. Now let's hop on the computer and I'm gonna show you guys what I kind of want the 740 project to look like once it's finished. Right, let's hop into my studio here. Obviously it's a different day, but let's hop on the computer and I'm gonna show you guys kind of what I'm going for. I'm not gonna copy this car, but it's gonna give you a general look of what I'm kind of going for. All right, so this is a 1987 Volvo 740 owned by a guy called Kalle Larsson. I'm gonna put a link to his Instagram right here. Now this car has kind of all the components that I'm also interested in. He has the same kind of style that I'm going for. He has the add-on kit here in the back, on the sides and in the front. He has this little wing on the trunk here. He has the 760 taillights, the long ones, which just fits this car perfectly. It makes it look a little wider than what it actually is. Now obviously we're not going to run the car this low. We're not going to have these wheels, etc, etc. It's not going to be white. We're still going to keep it red, probably. And if it's not going to be red, it's going to be purple. So we'll see about that. I used to have a Volvo 242, which was in a MAN purple. And I think that looks pretty good. This picture doesn't really give it justice, but it looked really nice. And I kind of missed that paint job. I still have the paint code for it, so I might be running with something like that. We'll see, but I mean, we have a lot of time to think about that before we get this thing into a paint booth. We gotta get it started, gotta get it running, and that might be a year or so in the future once we start doing those things. But anyway, I think either red or this purple. And in the front we have the American headlights. We also have the turbo grille. We have the fog lights, and here you can see the add-on kit better from the front. And if we take a look at the side of the car, we can see that it has these wind deflectors over the doors. That is also something that I am looking for. So anyway, somewhere along these lines is where we're gonna wind up eventually. Just wanted to let you guys know kind of what my thoughts are and how I kind of want it to look. All right, in the next episode, we're gonna bring the S60 in here, finish that off so we can get that up for sale. I'm gonna do some polishing on it, and then we're gonna take the 740 in here and continue on with the engines. We can finally get that up and running. And this year, I have a sponsor with me on the build, which is gonna be really exciting. So yeah, we got a lot of stuff going on. I've been planning a lot these past few weeks. So if you guys want to follow along this project, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Ha det gött! Hej! Dang, oh, my throat is not used to doing YouTube videos anymore. Ooh, I've been way too quiet the past few days.